It's the middle of July. Your electric bill just landed, and it's the highest one you've seen all year. Your grocery receipt keeps climbing, and somewhere in the back of your mind, you already know December is coming with a heating bill that'll knock the wind out of you. Here's what I learned the hard way. There are 3 money moves you can make right now, this month, that our grandparents made every single July without thinking twice. Do them now, and you lock in savings that carry you clear through winter. Miss the window, and you pay full price like everyone else. This isn't budgeting advice. This is old American timing, the kind of practical thrift that built households before credit cards existed. And by the end, I'll show you a trick tied to a 1935 government finding that can cut the heat coming into your house by more than 3/4 using something you can hang up this weekend. I remember standing in my father's garage in the July heat, watching him stack firewood in shorts and a t-shirt, sweat rolling down his neck, and asking him why on earth he was fussing with winter wood in the hottest week of the year. He just looked at me and said, "Because it's cheap right now, son." I didn't understand it then. I understand it completely now. And it works, whether you own a big farmhouse or rent a small apartment. Let me start with the first change, because it's the one that saved me the most money the first year I tried it, and it's the one almost nobody talks about anymore. For most of my adult life, I paid for heat the same way everyone I know pays for heat. I waited until it got cold. I waited until the first frost, until the furnace kicked on and the propane truck came, or until I was ordering heating oil in the middle of a January cold snap. That felt normal. That felt responsible. You buy heat when you need heat, right? Wrong. And it took me years to see how wrong. Here's the thing I finally noticed, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. The price of heating fuel, propane, heating oil, firewood, even pellets, follows demand like a shadow follows a man. When everyone in the country wants it at the same time, in December and January, the price climbs. When nobody wants it, in the dead heat of July, the price falls to the floor. It's the simplest law in the world, and the heating industry counts on you for getting it. I went digging into this because I got burned. One January, a few winters back, I ran low on propane during a cold stretch and had to take an emergency fill. I paid nearly double what my neighbor paid. Double. For the exact same gas out of what was probably the exact same truck. The only difference between us was timing. He'd filled his tank in the summer. I'd waited until I was desperate. So I started reading about how folks used to handle this before automatic delivery and budget plans made everybody lazy. And what I found went back a lot further than I expected. Back in the 17 and 1800s, laying in your winter fuel during summer wasn't a money-saving trick. It was survival, and everybody did it. A farmer who didn't have his woodshed full by the end of summer was a farmer who might freeze. They cut and split wood in June and July, not because they enjoyed sweating, but because green wood needs months to season before it burns clean. Wood cut in summer and stacked to dry would lose enough moisture by winter to give you nearly twice the heat of fresh-cut green wood. That's not folklore. Forestry research on firewood moisture backs it up. Cold, properly seasoned wood at around 20% moisture puts out far more usable heat than green wood sitting up around 50%. My father knew that in his bones. I had to read it in a university extension bulletin to believe it. So the first money change is this. In July, you buy your winter heat. If you burn wood, you buy it now, green and cheap, and you stack it to season. If you heat with propane or oil, you call for a summer fill right now, while the per-gallon price is at its lowest point of the entire year. Most suppliers will happily top your tank in July, and many of them offer a summer fill discount precisely because their trucks are sitting idle and they want the business in the slow season. The first summer I did this, I filled my propane in late July instead of waiting. I tracked the price. I paid nearly a third less per gallon than I'd paid the previous January during that emergency fill. On a full tank, that was real money, well over $100 saved on a single fill. just for buying heat when nobody else wanted it. But here's where it gets better. And here's the part that pulls you toward the second change. Because saving money on fuel is good. But what I discovered next is that our grandparents didn't just time their purchases. They had an entire system for making sure the money to buy things at the right time was always there, waiting when the cheap moment arrived. And that system was quietly killed off on purpose by the very institutions that were supposed to be helping us save. Let me tell you what they took from us. Have you ever wondered how ordinary working families, back before credit cards, managed to have cash on hand for big seasonal expenses, Christmas presents, winter fuel, property taxes, back-to-school clothes? These weren't rich people. These were factory workers, farmers, shopkeepers. They didn't have a line of credit to fall back on. So, how did they always seem to have the money ready exactly when they needed it? I'll tell you how. Because the answer is one of the most brilliant, simple, and deliberately forgotten money tools in American history. In the year 1910, a man named Merkel Landis, who worked at the Carlisle Trust Company in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, created something he called the Christmas Club. The idea was almost embarrassingly simple. Starting in the summer, ordinary people would deposit a small, fixed amount every single week, sometimes as little as a quarter or 50 cents or $1 into a special account they were not allowed to touch. The money just sat there and grew week after week all through the fall. Then, right before Christmas, the bank handed it all back in one lump sum so families could buy gifts and cover the holidays with cash instead of debt. That very first Christmas club at Carlisle signed up around 350 people, and they saved a total of about $28 each on average, which doesn't sound like much until you realize that in 1910, that was a serious chunk of money, enough to give a working family a real Christmas without borrowing a dime, and it exploded. By the 1920s and 1930s, Christmas clubs were everywhere. Banks all across America ran them. At the peak, millions of Americans were squirreling away money in these clubs. During the depths of the Great Depression, when banks were failing left and right, Christmas club money was often the only cash some families had when December came. There are records of people saying that the little bit they'd set aside all year in the Christmas club was what put food on the table and shoes on the kids during the worst years this country ever saw. Now here's the part that made me angry when I understood it. The Christmas Club worked because it did something a savings account can't do. It forced the discipline. You committed to the weekly deposit. You couldn't easily pull the money out. It was out of sight, out of mind, growing quietly in the background until the moment you needed it. It turned small, painless amounts into a big, useful pile automatically, by design. So why don't you have one? Why did your parents maybe have one, but you don't? Because the banks figured out something. They figured out they'd rather you didn't save up cash for Christmas. They'd rather you put Christmas on a credit card and pay them 15, 20, 25% interest on it deep into the following year. A customer with cash saved up is a customer who owes them nothing. A customer with an empty savings account and a full credit card is a customer who pays and pays and pays. The Christmas Club, from the bank's point of view, was a product that made them almost nothing and kept you out of debt. So it quietly disappeared. They stopped promoting it, they let it fade. And a whole generation grew up never knowing it existed. But here's the beautiful thing. You don't need the bank to run one for you. You never did. The genius of the Christmas Club was never the bank. It was the system. And you can rebuild that system yourself this July at your own kitchen table with nothing but an envelope or a coffee can and a little discipline. I figure out what December always costs me, the gifts, the travel, the food, the winter fuel top-up, all of it. Say that number lands somewhere around $500. I divide it by the weeks left until I need it. If it's 20 weeks, that's $25 a week. Then every single week, without fail, that $25 goes into a separate spot where I don't touch it. Not my checking account, where it gets spent by accident. A separate place? A different account at a different bank? Or honest to goodness, a labeled envelope in a drawer if that's what it takes to keep your hands off it? By the time December rolls around, the money is just there, all of it. And you walk through the whole season without borrowing one single dollar, without one January credit card bill making you sick to your stomach. The relief of that is worth more than the money itself. I promise you that. The first year I did it, my wife didn't believe it would work. She thought we'd rate it by October. But because it was separate, because it was out of reach, we didn't. And that Christmas was the first one in years I didn't spend January paying off. That feeling, that's what the banks took from millions of Americans and hoped they'd never miss. Now, I know exactly what some of you are thinking right about now. You're thinking this all sounds fine for a man with a house and a garage and a propane tank and money left over at the end of the month to stuff in an envelope. You're thinking, my situation is tighter than that. I rent. I don't have a wood stove. I'm already stretched thin. This isn't for me. Stop right there, because this next part is for you specifically. I mean you, the one who just thought this was for somebody with more room and more money than you've got. This third change costs you nothing to start, needs no special equipment, works in the smallest apartment kitchen, and it's the one that puts food money back in your pocket starting this very week. Here's what I finally understood about July, and it's something every American family used to know as plain common sense. July is when food is cheapest and best at the exact same time. Right now, this month, the fields and orchards are running over. Tomatoes, corn, green beans, peppers, zucchini, peaches, berries, cucumbers, they're all coming in at once, in such volume that the price drops to the floor. A basket of tomatoes that cost you a small fortune in a plastic clamshell in February is practically being given away at the farm stand and the market right now. That's not an accident. That's the harvest. That's the way it's always been. And our grandmothers understood the other half of that equation, which we forgot. The cheapest, best food of the whole year is available for only a few short weeks. So you don't just eat it now. You capture it. You put it up. You preserve summer's abundance to feed yourself through the barren months when the store has you over a barrel. This is where people panic, because they picture pressure canners hissing and steam and complicated equipment and the risk of doing it wrong. And yes, traditional canning is a wonderful skill. But you don't need any of it to start saving money this week. You have a freezer, and freezing is the simplest, safest, most forgiving way there is to capture July's cheap harvest and eat it in December. This is the second money change, and July is exactly when to start it because you've got roughly 20 weeks between now and the holidays, the same head start those old clubs gave people. And if you want to go even deeper into all of this, the timing systems, the seasonal money moves, the forgotten tools our grandparents used, I've put everything together in a book you can find linked in the description. It's called Smart Foundations, and it's part of a larger series, Deep American and the Full System, that lays out exactly how ordinary families used to run their households the way a well-oiled machine runs. No debt traps, no January regret, no depending on institutions that profit from your forgetting. If any of what I've been saying today resonates with you, that's where I go much further than I can in a single video. Check the description and take a look. Here's how I do it, and how I've done it for the last several years. Let me tell you exactly what I did the first time, because it couldn't be simpler. I bought a big flat of tomatoes at the peak of the season for next to nothing. I washed them, cored them, threw them whole onto a baking sheet, froze them solid, then dumped the frozen tomatoes into freezer bags. That's it. No boiling, no jars, no canner. When you want them in winter, the skins slip right off under warm water and they go straight into sauce or soup. I did the same with peppers, just chopped and froze them raw on a tray. Same with berries. Same with corn cut off the cob. The savings genuinely shocked me. I ran the numbers because I didn't believe them myself. Buying peppers in season and freezing them cost me roughly a third, sometimes a quarter of what the same peppers cost me out of season in the dead of winter. Across a whole freezer's worth of summer produce, put up over a few July weekends, I was looking at well over $100 in groceries I simply wasn't buying at winter prices. And it tasted better because it was picked ripe in season instead of shipped green from the other side of the world. This is exactly what the extension services were teaching American families 100 years ago, and they weren't shy about the reason. During both World Wars and all through the Depression, the government pushed home food preservation hard. The Victory Garden campaigns, the canning bulletins from the United States Department of Agriculture, the home demonstration agents who went town to town teaching women how to put up the harvest. The whole point was self-reliance. A family that preserved its own summer food was a family that didn't go hungry in winter and didn't depend on anybody. That knowledge used to pass from mother to daughter as naturally as breathing. Then the supermarket came along, sold us the idea that every food should be available every month of the year, and one generation later, almost nobody's grandkids know how to put up a tomato. So there's your third change, and you can start it this Saturday. Go find the cheapest, most overflowing produce at the market or the farm stand, whatever's piled highest and priced lowest, because that's what's in true season. Buy more than you can eat this week. Freeze the extra using nothing but bags and a baking sheet. You just moved winter grocery money into your pocket and locked in food at summer prices. Now those three changes alone, summer heat, the rebuilt Christmas club, and freezing the July harvest, will genuinely change your winter. I've lived it. Any one of them is worth the effort. All three together add up to real breathing room when the cold and the bills arrive at the same time. But I promised you something at the start. I promised you a trick tied to a government finding, one that can cut the heat pouring into your home by more than 3/4. And this is the one that surprised me most of all, because I'd been paying to fight this problem for 30 years and never once questioned it. Here it is. Every July, the sun beats down on your house, pours through your windows, and turns your rooms into an oven. And what do? We fight it with the air conditioner. We run that compressor harder and harder, watching the electric meter spin, paying more every year as rates climb, treating the summer electric bill like a law of nature we just have to accept. But our great-grandparents kept their houses cool in brutal summers with no electricity at all. None. And it wasn't luck. And it wasn't just that they suffered through it. They had a technology so effective and so quietly abandoned that when I found the government research on it, I actually said out loud, you have got to be kidding me. The secret is stopping the sun before it ever gets through the glass. Not after, before. Here's the thing almost nobody understands about a hot house. Once sunlight passes through your window glass and hits the floor and the furniture inside, it turns into heat that's trapped in the room. At that point, your air conditioner has to haul it back out, dollar by dollar. An inside curtain or blind barely helps, because by the time the light hits it, it's already inside. The heat's already in the room. The battle is already lost. You have to block the sun on the outside of the glass before it ever gets in. And that is exactly what the old exterior window awning did. Go look at photographs of American main streets and homes from the 1800s and early 1900s. Look at those old brick houses, those storefronts. Nearly every window has an awning over it, those striped canvas shades that stick out over the glass. We think of them now as decoration, as an old-timey look. They were not decoration. They were cooling technology, and they were on those windows because they worked. Here's the buried proof. Back in 1935, researchers were already measuring exactly how much heat these things kept out, and the numbers held up so well that the United States Department of Energy still cites the findings today. According to that research, exterior window awnings can reduce the solar heat gain coming into your home through a window by as much as 65% on windows facing south, and up to a stunning 77% on windows facing west, the very windows that cook you all afternoon and evening in July. Let me say that again so it lands. More than three-quarters of the heat that would have come through your worst afternoon window stopped before it ever gets inside, not fought with electricity after the fact. Stopped at the glass. That's heat your air conditioner never has to remove, which means a compressor that runs less, a meter that spins slower, and a July electric bill that finally comes down instead of up. This is the technology the air conditioning industry was thrilled for us to forget. Because an awning is a one-time purchase that costs you nothing to run, lasts for years, and quietly lowers your cooling bill forever. A central air system is a big, expensive machine that you buy, then pay to run, then pay to repair, then eventually pay to replace. Guess which one got advertised on television for the last 70 years, and which one got dismissed as an old-fashioned eyesore? When mechanical air conditioning got cheap and common in the 1950s and 60s, we tore the awnings off our houses and plugged in the machines, and we've been paying the electric company for that trade ever since. And here's the best part, the part that means you can act on this before the summer's even over. You do not need to install permanent metal awnings to prove this to yourself this weekend. You can test the principle for almost nothing. The rule is simple. Block the sun on the outside of the glass, especially on your west-facing and south-facing windows. Here's what I did the first summer, before I committed to real awnings. On my worst west-facing windows, the ones that turned my living room into a furnace every evening, I put up simple outdoor shade cloth on the outside, the kind of woven shade fabric they sell for gardens and patios for just a few dollars a panel. I hung it to hang out over the window on the outside of the glass. That afternoon, I put my hand near that window, and the wall of heat that was always there was just gone. The room stayed livable without the air conditioner roaring. My meter reader would have thought I moved out. If you rent and can't drill into anything, you can still do a version of this. An outdoor umbrella angled to shade a hot window. A shade panel hung from a tension rod on a balcony. Even a light-colored sheet rigged outside the glass does far more than the fanciest curtain hung inside, because the whole secret is stopping the light before it becomes trapped heat. Inside is too late. Outside is where the battle is won. Once you feel that difference with your own hand on your own wall, you'll understand why every house in America used to wear awnings, and why somebody was very happy when we forgot. Add real exterior awnings or shades to your worst windows, and you carry that 77% straight into every summer for years to come, the same relief our great-grandparents took completely for granted. So let's put the whole thing together, because that's the point. This is one plan, and July is the hinge the whole year turns on. This month, while heat is at its cheapest, you lay in your winter fuel, you season your wood, or you take the summer fill on your tank at the low price instead of paying double in a January panic like I did. This month, you rebuild the Christmas club they stopped offering you, setting aside a small fixed amount every week into a place you can't touch, so December arrives already paid for and no credit card gets its hooks in you. This month, while the harvest is overflowing and dirt cheap, you capture summer's food in your freezer to eat through the winter at a fraction of the store price. And this month, while the sun is at its highest and most brutal, you stop it at the glass with a shade on the outside of your worst windows and take back the 77% our great-grandparents never surrendered. Not one of these needs a corporation. Not one needs a subscription. Not one of them needs you to be rich, or to start over, or to have a big house. Every one of them is something an ordinary American family did as a matter of plain common sense, back before we were taught that convenience was worth any price and that the old ways were beneath us. What I finally understood, standing in that hot garage watching my father stack summer wood all those years ago, is that thrift was never really about pinching pennies. It was about timing. It was about doing the smart thing in the right season, so the hard season couldn't get you. My father wasn't cheap. He was free. He didn't lie awake in January worrying about the propane man or the credit card bill, because he'd handled all of it back in July, sweating and smiling, while everybody else was at the pool pretending winter would never come. That's the freedom they quietly sold out from under us, one convenience at a time. And the beautiful thing is, They never actually took it. They just talked us into setting it down. You can pick it right back up this week. It's still lying there, right where our grandparents left it. If you're the kind of person who's always suspected that a lot of genuinely useful knowledge got shelved not because it stopped working, but because somebody figured out how to sell you the expensive version instead, then you and I are cut from the same cloth, and you're in the right place. So let me ask you something specific, and I really do want you to answer this one. Did your family ever have a Christmas Club account? I want you to think back a grandmother, a parent, that little book from the bank with the weekly stamps in it. If you remember one, or if you remember your folks laying in firewood in the summer heat, drop it in the comments below and tell me about it. This audience doesn't speak up much, so I'm asking you directly take 10 seconds and leave a comment, because those memories are exactly the knowledge we're trying to save here before it's gone for good. And tell me which of these 3 changes you're going to start with, and where in the country you're watching from, so I know who's out there. If any of this hit home, subscribe and stand with the rest of us who are digging up this old American know-how before it disappears completely. We're not just watching videos here, we're recovering things that were taken from us. Because next time, I'm going to show you the forgotten way Americans kept milk, butter, and eggs fresh for weeks with no refrigerator at all, a method so simple and so cheap that once you see it, you'll wonder how we ever let ourselves become so dependent on a machine that never stops costing us money. It's older than the electric company, and it still works today. I'll see you there. There you have it. But this video only had room for the overview. Inside my membership, the Practical Ways Circle, I pick up right where I just left off. You can ask me your own questions, and I answer you myself. A real person, never a machine. You're in good company here, alongside folks just like you. Just point your phone's camera at the code on your screen, and you can cancel anytime.